Have you ever felt your words drowned out in a world full of noise? Have you ever tried to explain yourself only to feel even more misunderstood? And have you ever wondered if sometimes silence is actually the strongest answer? Silence, it's not weakness, it's not surrender, it's not avoidance or fear. When understood and used with intention, silence is one of the most powerful responses a human being can offer, because most people live caught in noise, trapped in reaction, in the constant need to explain, defend, argue, prove. But the Stoic chooses stillness. They know the moment you start explaining yourself to someone who's already decided not to understand you, you've already lost. True strength doesn't come from words, it comes from restraint. The man who can stay calm when insulted, composed when provoked, and unmoved when misunderstood, that man commands the room without ever raising his voice, because he's mastered the one thing most people will never conquer: himself. You don't have to react to everything. You don't have to prove you're right. You don't have to convince anyone of your worth. You're not here to be understood by everyone. And you certainly don't owe anyone access to your inner world. Let them speak. Let them assume. Let them project. Because silence is your advantage. Most people are slaves to their impulses. One sly comment, one subtle insult, and they erupt. They chase validation like a dog chases cars mindlessly. But not you. Your silence is power. Controlled. It whispers, "I see you, but you do not move me." In a world that screams for attention, silence is the one thing that terrifies the insecure. Because silence reveals everything. It forces people to sit with themselves, to reflect. And in that space, the weak get louder, the strong become stiller. Most people don't get this. They've been trained to argue, to defend, to explain, but not to stay still. Because words, like money, lose value when spent carelessly. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." So, when someone disrespects you, let silence say they're not worth your energy. When someone tries to manipulate you, let silence say you see through it and you owe them nothing. When someone leaves, betrays, or misunderstands you, let silence say, "I don't chase, I don't plead, I don't beg." It's not about ignoring people, it's about mastering yourself. When you've built enough inner discipline, you no longer need the last word, because in your mind you've already won. And this is only the beginning of mastering your inner power. Once you've mastered silence, you're no longer the puppet of emotions, you become the one holding the strings. Understand this: every time you respond emotionally to someone who's trying to trigger you, you're handing them the steering wheel of your life. Every time you rush to explain yourself, you surrender your authority over your own truth. Every time you break your own boundaries just to keep peace with someone else, you lose peace with yourself, and no relationship is worth that price. Silence is not coldness, silence is clarity. It draws a firm but quiet line that says, "I don't need to fight to protect my peace. I simply walk away." You see, most people talk just to be heard, but the Stoic, they speak only to strengthen peace, or defend virtue when it truly matters. Everything else, noise. If someone disrespects you, watch them. Let them expose themselves with their own words. Don't interrupt. Don't defend. Don't engage. Just let the silence echo their true character, louder than any words you could say. And if they expect a reaction, give them none. If they seek control, give them emptiness. If they crave drama, give them indifference. Why? Because a person who cannot provoke you cannot control you. And that is what Stoicism teaches at its core: freedom through inner control. Not reacting isn't weakness, it's maturity. It's holding your tongue even when every nerve in your body is begging to defend yourself. That's not passivity, that's power. The strongest man in the room isn't the loudest. He's the one who feels everything but shows nothing. The one who doesn't flinch when tested, doesn't explain when doubted, doesn't chase when left behind. He remains still, focused, unmoved, because he knows what others don't. Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every insult needs a reply. Not every invitation to chaos deserves an RSVP, and so, silence becomes the filter that protects your peace. Over time, it transforms you. You begin attracting people who respect your boundaries. You stop explaining yourself to those who don't matter. You stop wasting time on draining conversations. Instead, you start building something far greater than validation, self-possession. This is exactly what Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of daily. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You don't need the world to understand your silence. You only need to understand that your silence protects your world. So, next time someone tries to test you, pause, feel the heat rising. Notice the urge to react, then breathe, and choose the higher path. Because sometimes, the loudest move you can make in a world addicted to noise is complete silence. When you're steady enough to choose silence in the midst of chaos, you no longer get pulled into battles that don't matter, you simply keep walking. Calm, unshaken, and that's exactly when you win. You win the moment. You no longer feel the need to prove what you already are. You win when your presence speaks for itself and the world, though loud, falls silent in awe. That is how the Stoics win. Not by shouting, not by chasing, not by explaining, but by mastering the art of stillness. Because when you learn how to say nothing, you're saying everything. In the end, victory doesn't come from explaining yourself. It doesn't come from arguing. It comes when you become untouchable. You win when your peace is non-negotiable, when your mind no longer flinches under pressure, when your silence holds more gravity than all their noise combined. The world is loud. People speak just to be heard. But the Stoic speaks only when words carry weight. And sometimes, the most powerful message is no message at all. You don't need to announce your growth. You don't need to prove your strength. The people who truly matter, they'll feel it in your stillness, in your restraint, in your refusal to break character under pressure. So hold the line. Say less, observe more, and act only with purpose. Because in a distracted, noisy world, the rarest kind of man is the one who doesn't need to speak to command the room. He just is anchored, clear, and unshakable. That is Stoic power. And that is who you are becoming now. When you become the person who can't be easily shaken, you're not just reacting differently, you're becoming someone new. True strength doesn't lie in muscle or dominance. It lies in the ability to control your own emotions in moments where others lose theirs. That's the art of inner power, a quiet maturity that doesn't need to be displayed. When you stay calm while others lose control, when you choose not to react to provocation, when you stand tall in the face of misunderstanding without needing to explain, that's when you're no longer someone who reacts on impulse. You become someone who acts with purpose. Because what makes a person truly strong is not their ability to strike back. It's their ability to refrain from striking back when they can. Picture someone being insulted, yet their gaze remains steady, their hands calm, their heart unmoved. They don't need to speak because their presence speaks for them. You don't have to shout to prove emotional control. You just need to stay silent at the right moment, and your inner strength will echo on its own. And then something remarkable happens. You no longer crave validation. You're no longer triggered by every insult. You're no longer drawn into petty conflict. Instead, you begin to live by your true values. And in doing so, your stillness becomes a kind of spiritual weight, something others can feel without you ever having to explain. The more you master your emotions, the less you get hurt, the less you speak, the more powerful your presence becomes, the less you react, the harder you are to control. And so, you move through life without shouting, without arguing, yet you leave an impression that cannot be erased. Once you begin living from a place of inner calm, something remarkable happens. Your relationships begin to shift. You no longer beg for acceptance. You stop holding on to connections that drain you. You no longer plead to be understood by those who never cared to see the depth in you. Instead, you begin to choose. You choose peace over drama, distance over dysfunction, spiritual freedom over temporary approval. Silence is no longer just a defense mechanism. It becomes a conscious way of living. You don't respond to every criticism. You don't engage in every argument. You no longer look for your worth in someone else's reflection. When someone gets angry and you don't react, they're forced to face their own chaos. When someone tries to control you and you smile quietly and walk away, they're left confused because they've lost their grip. When someone misunderstands you and instead of pleading, you stay rooted in your truth, that's when you truly take control of your life. Because the truth is, you're not here to be understood by everyone. You don't need universal agreement. You don't have to explain yourself to those whose hearts aren't open to listening. And just like a masterpiece doesn't need a caption, your piece will speak volumes. Every step you take, every choice you make, every silence you hold becomes your loudest declaration. No performance, no persuasion. Just you, fully, unapologetically, and undisturbed. Once silence takes root inside you, it doesn't just protect you, it becomes a gift you offer the world. It's not an empty void, but a safe space, a space where others feel seen, heard, and accepted. A space where someone can be themselves without being interrupted. A space where listening, true listening, can finally happen. In a world that's rushing, where everyone is talking over each other, your calm presence becomes rare. And because it's rare, it becomes powerful. You don't need to speak loudly to influence others. You don't need to control people to lead. It's your calm energy, your steady gaze, your unshakable presence that earns respect, trust, and admiration. Because real silence doesn't create distance, it draws people closer. It invites authenticity. It radiates safety. It allows others to explore their own depth. That's why the strongest person isn't the one who makes the room go quiet by force, but the one whose presence alone brings stillness. And now, at the end of this journey, you realize something you don't need to change the world by shouting. You only need to change yourself through the quiet strength of inner silence. Hold on to that silence. Let it be your compass, not as a way to hide from life, but as a way to shape it with clarity, with dignity, with the quiet power of someone who has mastered themselves. Because in the end, the person who masters themselves is the freest of all. And that person is you.